And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you for episode 76 of this fine show. And coming up today, we're going to lead with the Rangers as we're going to go transition to the ice. JT Miller is back with Hoosiers as Chris Drury makes the one trade that maybe could save his job. We'll dive into the pros and cons of bringing the familiar face back to the Garden and miss a huge next couple weeks for the Rangers before the Four Nations face-off. We'll, of course, talk to Knicks. OG Anunoby is out tonight with a foot sprain. Is it panic time for the Knicks in terms of losing one of their more reliable players in terms of game time this year? And what does the Luka trade mean for the Knicks? And what does the De'Aaron Fox trade mean for the Nets? The trade deadline starts on Thursday. We'll talk about the Giants and Eli Manning, his Hall of Fame chance. Will he get into a first ballot? That gets announced on Thursday night, the NFL Honors. We'll look at his candidacy. Aaron Glenn finalizes most of his coaching staff. The Mets signed an infielder to potentially replace Jose Iglesias. And we'll talk St. John's basketball with its biggest week since 1999, as they will likely move up in the AP poll today, hosting Marquette Tuesday, and then going to UConn and the two-time national champs on Friday. It's all coming up next here on New York State Sports. We will see you. And welcome back, of course, to New York State of Sports here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you in the house today. We have a cool announcement coming up about Super Bowl Sunday, of course, later on in the program, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. Want to remind you, of course, you can follow us on X, IG, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube. Like and subscribe at IE Sports Radio. You can log on to iesportsradio.com. Each show has its own page. iesportsradio.com/New York State of Sports is the place you want to go for that. If you missed any portion of the show or just want to hear me talk again, download the podcast, Apple Podcast, Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, anywhere you get your podcast. Chances are that is where you're going to find this program. And you can follow me on X at Rickinator555, or if you want to follow the show at NY State Sports IE, you'll find me tweeting on both accounts. A couple people in here in the chat today. Alden, welcome back, buddy. Thanks for being on. And Ralph is here, and yes, we're going to get into that in a little bit, but I'm excited to be talking with the Hall of Famer sometime this week, well, this Sunday for a special episode, but we'll dive into that all coming up in a few minutes. First, we're going to give you a little bit from the folks at Planet Jerky, Seal the Deal Wax Seals, Vital Apparel, and hear from Larry B about what else is great about IE Sports Radio, and then we'll dive into the whole Super Bowl Sunday announcement, and we'll lead off with hockey. We don't normally do lead off with hockey, but we're getting to February and March, and I think at that point now we start transitioning from football field to the baseball diamond. Hockey, NBA will get its fair share here on the network. So stay tuned. Come up next, you're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all of this sports. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
IE Sports Radio fans, this show is brought to you by Planet Jerky Premium Brisket Beef Jerky. Planet Jerky is the official jerky of the 2022 California League champion Lake Elsinore Storm, Single-A affiliate of the San Diego Padres. This all-brisket jerky has gluten-free options, contains no MSG, no sodium nitrate, is low in sugar, and high in protein. Go to their website at planetjerky.net and follow them on Instagram at Planet Jerky. Planet Jerky, the jerky that's on a whole other planet.
rise and shine. It's 4 a.m. The stars are still out. The sun is beneath the horizon, but it's time to punch in and go to work. The comfort of your warm-ups turns into the grinding out of your reps as the clinking and the clanking of the plates create a symphony of euphoria. There's no other feeling like it. Earn it, burn it, and take what's yours. IE Sports Radio has proudly partnered with Vital Apparel, a brand that not only fits great, but also promotes and donates to mental health research. Use our code IESR to get 15% off their comfortable and inspiring gym wear and help them on their amazing journey to support mental health. Go hard, take part in your iron therapy, and be strong. Because when your mental health is as strong as you are, there's no telling how far you'll go.
Hey there, IE Sports Radio fans. Be sure to check out our sponsor, Seal the Deal Wax Seals by Cecilia B. You just finished your very own wedding or baby shower invitations and you're looking for that extra special touch? Maybe you just wrote a letter to a relative or a friend and you want to add to their smile when they receive it. Then seal the deal with Cecilia's handmade sealing wax stamps for your invitations, letters, and gifts. You bring the deal, we'll bring the seal. You can find them on Instagram at @sealthedeal_wax stamps and on Facebook, Seal the Deal Wax Seals.
For the last 10 years, IE Sports Radio has been bringing you amazing content ranging from interviewing legendary athletes, coaches, and other authorized media personnel to building tailor-made shows dedicated to all major sports cities around the country. Make sure to follow us at IE Sports Radio on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, and YouTube to keep up with the latest in sports and with all of our shows. Also, make sure to check out our daily updated website at iesportsradio.com. At iesportsradio.com, you can see our daily show schedule and check out all of our show pages with personal bios to learn a little bit more about each of our awesome hosts. In addition to our show pages, you can catch the IE Sports Radio blog, Hall of Fame, Fans of the Month page, and our merchandise shop including t-shirts, tank tops, caps, long sleeves, hoodies, and more. For now over a decade here at IE Sports Radio, we've continued to be by the fans, for the fans, and we thank you all for your support and for making IE Sports Radio your direct feed for all that is sports.
So, of course, thanks to our awesome sponsors here at IE Sports Radio, Planet Jerky, which is a great snack for the Super Bowl, Vital Apparel, get your gym wear for all year round, support mental health awareness, Seal Deal Wax Seals for those awesome invitations for your weddings and or special events. Of course, continue to check out all the great work here at IE Sports Radio, including coming up this Sunday is our Super Bowl 59 streaming extravaganza. It's going to be fantastic. So essentially what's going to happen is from, I believe, about 10 a.m. Eastern till about kickoff. We're going to be having a live show every hour here on the network, and it's going to be fantastic. Different angles about the big game, different topics that are going to get talked about leading up into the broadcast. Of course, our sister station, USRN, could be a part of that broadcast, so be sure to tune into that. And then after the game, Larry B will have a post-game show. It'll be great. I might be on that But definitely I will be a part of one of the shows. So you can catch my show 4 p.m. Eastern. We are joined by Ralph Calise, my fellow New Yorker from the Yinzer Report. And our show is going to take a little bit of a different angle. We'll talk about history, of course, with the Hall of Fame announcement, and legacies and Super Bowls. Of course, today, 17 years ago, was the big Eli Manning to David Tyree play, which led the Giants to Eli's first of 2 Super Bowls, and, of course, one of the more memorable upsets in Super Bowl history. So how can a Super Bowl change a legacy? How can it ruin a legacy? And we'll dive into all that with Eli Manning, of course, a little bit later. But those are some of the topics that we're going to get into. We'll talk about Tom Brady being in the booth for a Super Bowl for the first time, and what kind of pros and cons could Brady to the broadcast be, and so much more. So that'll be for 1 hour, 4 to 5 Eastern on Sunday. Me and Ralph, I'm excited to be a part of that. Of course, in addition to the sponsors you just heard, check it out. One of our sponsors, Raw Nutrition Supplements. Go to getrawnutrition.com. Use the promo code IESR. You get 10% off. So be sure to take advantage of that today. So let's talk about hockey. JT Miller back with the Blue Shirts. Late Friday night, it was announced that Miller was acquired by the Rangers. New York sends back to Vancouver Filipino, Victor Mancini, and a first-round pick in the 2025 NHL draft. Now, that pick is top 13 protected. So if the Rangers end up not making the playoffs or falling close to the lottery, Vancouver would get a first-round pick in 2026. The Rangers also got back in this deal Eric Brandstrom and Jackson Dorrington, a couple of young defensemen. So what does this deal mean for the Rangers? It's obvious Chris Drury is going for one last big move. And my argument, of course, if you've listened over the last year that we've done this show, going back to last year, is why didn't Chris Drury make this deal a year ago? I know things are different. I know Vancouver, you have to take 2 to tango. I'm not saying this particular deal. What I'm saying is you needed to make the big splash last year when this team was a President's Trophy winner and his team was ready to win a cup. That's the kind of deal you make for this. And now Chris Drury is basically playing, okay, this is my last-ditch effort, because if the Rangers miss the playoffs this year, they're going to make changes, and I think it's going to end up being the general manager and not the head coach. So when you talk about what this deal brings, well, one of the things Miller does well, great aggressiveness, and he's great with the forecheck, good physicality as well. And you've seen that in the Rangers' last 2 games. He picked up a goal in his return to the Rangers Saturday in Boston, had a big assist last night against Vegas, as the Rangers end up splitting those 2 games. So you've clearly seen that impact being made. And he also has a good friendship with Vincent Trocheck. And a lot of people, Rangers beat writers, have pointed out that maybe this means that Trocheck's the future captain of this team. But there are pros and cons to this deal for sure. And I think one of the cons in this deal is Rangers are just older. Between an aging Miller, who still has 4 years left on the 7-year extension at $8 million per. Mika is getting older. Kreider's getting older. You now it's basically taken the bulk of the kid line away, which I found it funny. People were tweeting last night the kid line scored in 3 separate games. Lafreniere scored, Kakko in Seattle, now Chytil with Vancouver. You're now become a lot older and a lot more hoping that these guys can at least find some form of the fountain of youth. Maybe bringing Miller in picks less of the onus on Kreider, less of the onus on Zibanejad, but a lot of aging centers on this Rangers team. A lot of experience for sure, but there's something about having a lot of youth on this team that I think would be interesting. Now, the pros of this deal is, again, you're getting a guy that's familiar with playing in New York. Did okay playing in New York. Of course, he was part of that run in the early 2010s. They dealt into Tampa when they sent out the memo that they were going to rebuild. He hasn't been fantastic this year, 39 points in 42 games. It's coming off 30-plus goals each of the last 3 seasons. But I do think the pros of this deal is you didn't really give up that much to get a guy that can impact the team. Filipino's been banged up over the last couple of years. When he's in the lineup, he makes an impact, but he's not in the lineup enough. And I think they want to take advantage of Chytil's value while it was still there. Of course, we've seen Berard play and do a good job, and we've seen Will Cooley play and he's done a good job. So you can trade from the aspects of younger players, so getting rid of Chytil, not a big deal. As for Mancini, Rangers have a lot of young defensemen. We've clearly seen Zach Jones being fed up with the lack of playing time. Canucks, I think, wanted Braden Schneider. The Rangers didn't want to do that. So there is just not a lot of playing time for Mancini, and they probably don't project him out long-term to being an asset for this year's team. So that would make sense. And again, with the draft pick, if you miss the playoffs, you probably will keep the pick unless they're on the fringe of the lottery. I'd have to look at where they would be right now in terms of lottery projections. But that's the kind of deal you make when you're desperate. And the question now is JT Miller enough to spark a playoff berth? The Rangers, as of today, if you look at the wild card standings, that's why last night's win was huge. They're 5 points out of a playoff spot. Detroit and Columbus are tied for the 2 wild card spots with 59 points. Tampa has 58 along with Boston. And the Rangers actually are trailing the Islanders, who we'll get into in a minute. The Islanders, after losing last night, had previously won 7 in a row. The Rangers got back into this with a red-hot January because without it, I don't think they make this deal. I think the month of January had convinced them to invest in this roster as much as they can. Now, could they make deals a month from now if this thing goes south? Keandre Miller could be a free agent at the end of the year. Maybe you look to deal him. There's still buy-sell options, but I think Chris Drury is clearly invested in the win now. And that's what he should. I mean, if this Ranger team does make the playoffs, you have one of the better goalies in the NHL in Igor Shesterkin. You can make a run out of the 8th seed. I mean, we're talking about the neutral zone last week with Zach Puppel, Sam Karnik, that if you do make the playoffs, anything can happen because of Igor Shesterkin. He makes that much of an impact when he's on his game. So that's what you have in your back pocket. Now, the Rangers have to take advantage of a schedule this week that can give them a chance to gain ground. It starts Wednesday, 7 o'clock on TNT at home against Boston. Boston embarrassed them on Saturday, 6-3. Was not a good performance. David Pastrnak had a hat trick. Miller had 2 goals, but was just not enough as the Bruins took it to the Rangers pretty quickly out of the gate. So that'll be a chance for a rematch. Rangers are 4 points behind Boston, so they really need those 2 points. They'll be home to Pittsburgh on Friday. Again, Pittsburgh has 52 points, 2 points behind them. And then they're at Columbus on Saturday. Rangers beat Columbus last time, but beat them in overtime. And that gave Columbus a point. So you want to be able to, if you're the Rangers, you want to win these last 3 before the 4 nations. I mean, that is a huge deal to get 3 wins, get to 60 points, and feel confident before you go back to work on February 22nd. So I'm not saying these 3 are must win for the Rangers, but I think they've got to get at least the 2 against Boston and Columbus, because that's going to make their chances at a run over these last month and a half a lot easier. Now, shout out to Jonathan Quick, who had waited a month, but he finally gets his 400th win last night. 15th goalie in NHL history to get to 400 wins. He had 34 saves on 36 shots last night. The Rangers actually swept Vegas, and that is no easy feat. They beat him with 2 different goaltenders, but Jonathan Quick probably going to go down as the best American goaltender, at least right now. I mean, of course, Ranger fans remember him with the Kings winning the Stanley Cup. But when you look at Jonathan Quick, he has been such a veteran influence in the locker room. And a veteran influence, I think, for Igor Shesterkin as well. When you bring in a Stanley Cup goaltender as your backup, it changes things. And we've seen Quick steal games still as a veteran. But Peter Laviolette talked about it after last night's win as just a guy that's a good person, good for the locker room, good for a group that is trying to find itself, because this group is clearly taking its bumps and bruises this year and is trying to figure out its own identity. So the question is going to be what the Rangers do, but I think they've found Jonathan Quick has been a really good story for this team and a really good guy to kind of follow around. So congratulations to Quick, well-deserved. And again, he's going to be a Hall of Famer. And for the fact that he's going to, when you look at the history of American goalies, to be number 1 on that list is a pretty good accomplishment. Staying with the ice and the Islanders, they've been fine in their form. Like I said, they are right back in the postseason picture. Their coaching staff won the NHLPA coaching staff in a month for January, which is pretty cool. So congrats to those guys. And the Islanders, again, just stay 4 points out of a playoff spot. They had a pretty good week, all things considering. We talked about how tough the Florida doubleheader was going to be, but they beat the Lightning 3-2 in overtime on Saturday. Tony DeAngelo, who was the controversial pickup, gets a goal 33 seconds into overtime after the Lightning had tied it with a minute to go in regulation. So big 2 points there. Last night, a little bit on the rough side. Carter Verhaeghe had a hat trick for the defending champions. Jacob Skurek got the start and goal. It was not Ilya Sorokin. So Florida gets a 6-3 win. But again, still Islanders 4 points out of a spot. They have their 3 games before the 4 nations break. It'll be Vegas on Tuesday, 7:30 on ESPN+, at Winnipeg on Friday. Jets are having a good year, 77 points, and then at the Wild on Saturday. So got to love what the Islanders are doing right now. I mean, they are finding ways to win. And again, they have not been the most banged. They've not been the easiest group. They did beat Colorado earlier in the week. They shut out Philly, 23 saves, and a shout out to Mark Gacombe, 25-year-old center. He got his first NHL goal of his career. He's had 2 goals this week. He has made an impact coming up from the minors. So, I mean, we talk about kind of the rip a few weeks ago between Lou Lamoriello and Patrick Waugh, what was going to happen with that. Well, the Islanders have really found their form. I mean, they had a 7-game win streak up until last night. And that's how you get back in the playoff picture. Now, again, 2 tough teams against 3 Western Conference opponents that are really good, all over 65 points. But if they can just steal a couple of points, they've got to be feeling good going into the break. And then finally, real quick with the Devils, of course, we all know about the Markstrom injury. They did not have the greatest of weeks. They did beat the only game they played 3 games a week, lost to Philly 4-2 on Monday, then shut him out 5-0 on Wednesday at the Prudential Center. 24 saves for Jake Allen. The Hughes brothers got a goal. Palat got a goal in the opening minutes of the second period. All 5 goals in the final 2 periods. But then yesterday, a big disappointment out in Buffalo as Devils lost 4-3. They were not good on the faceoff. That was a big issue for them. They got down 3 goals after the first period. Now they fought back, including a shorthander from Hughes in the third period. Paul Cotter got a goal 18 seconds into the third, but it was just not enough for New Jersey, unfortunately. And then right now in the standings, the Devils will get to let's do their next 3. At Pittsburgh tomorrow, home to Vegas on Thursday, and then at Montreal on Saturday before the 4 Nations break. Devils right now are at 64 points. They are 4 points behind Carolina for the 2 spot in the Metro. 5 points ahead of Columbus for the 3rd spot. So remember that big gap they had isn't there anymore. So New Jersey, we'll see what they do between now and the beginning of March at the trade deadline. But can they survive without Markstrom for at least a little while? We will see. So we'll take our first break. We'll come back. We'll talk some Knicks. OG Anunoby out tonight with a foot sprain. What does it mean? Should Knicks fans be concerned? We'll dive into all that. And, of course, the big trades in the NBA. Luka Doncic to the Lakers for Anthony Davis and De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs. Zach LaVine's involved. But what does it mean for both the Knicks and the Nets and how that could have either help or hurt their chances to improve in different ways going to the deadline Thursday? It's all coming up next on New York State Sports and iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll be right back.
Are you a Tar Heel, Blue Devil, Demon Deacon, or maybe even a Gamecock? Do you cheer for the Panthers, the Canes, the Crown? And check out the Carolina Sports Update every week with me, Neil Curtis, to get the latest and greatest on all the sports action in the Carolinas. We'll be talking pro sports, ACC and SEC football, basketball, baseball, and everything in between. We'll even talk a little Formula One racing now and again. So, for the best hour of Carolina sports coverage, catch me each week on Carolina Sports Updates with Neil Curtis, right here on ID Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Mike from Indie Sports Nation. Come hang out with me each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time, where we talk things Indiana sports. We talk Colts, Pacers, Fever, Indy Ignite, and we dive into the college scene as well. Boilermakers, Hoosiers, Irish, Bulldogs, and every school in between. And we don't stop there. We'll sprinkle in some NHRA and cover the IndyCar series. From the turf to the hardwood to the track, we got you covered. Come hang out with your boy, Big Mike, each and every Friday, 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. Eastern Time. Indie Sports Nation, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Of course, welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. They moved from the ice to the hardwood. We talk some New York Knicks, and Saturday night was probably one of the weirdest nights in NBA history. And of course, everyone's going to remember what happened after the game, but the Knicks during the game end up losing to the Lakers 128 to 112. LeBron James, 33 points, 12 assists, 11 boards, just continues to dominate the Garden. We were talking about this in our station group chat, just about how a lot of the top MSG performers are people that aren't on the home team. We look at LeBron and Kobe and MJ and all those memorable performances they've had the Garden. LeBron had that at 40 years old Saturday night without Anthony Davis, who of course was injured and then gets traded. But LeBron was incredible. You look at the Knicks, who again lose OG Anunoby in the second quarter. They just did not get much else going. They were 10 for 28 from three. Achua gave him 15 off the bench. McBride gave him 12 off the bench, but just 11 points for Karl-Anthony Towns. And when he's not going, as much as Josh Hart had a triple-double himself and played really well, that was not to happen. So OG Anunoby is diagnosed with a foot sprain. He was questionable yesterday. About a couple hours ago, he was ruled out for tonight as the Knicks take on the Houston Rockets at the Garden. Knicks are favored around 5 or 6 points. Rockets, of course, are one of the top three teams in the West. They, though, coming off of a loss to Brooklyn on Saturday at home, which is kind of surprising. But when you look at the Knicks right now, I think the key is just getting to the I'm not going to rush OG Anunoby back from this injury. And people are going to say OG's injury prone. Yes, that is true. The Knicks only have 7 games left before the All-Star break. If you just tell OG, hey, miss these next 7, come back after the All-Star break, I think you would be okay with that. You need him healthy for March and April. You don't need him healthy right now necessarily. Because the Knicks can use Precious Achiuwa in the starting lineup a little bit. They can also go with Deuce McBride. It's kind of a more scoring from the guard position. So there are multiple ways the Knicks could outlast OG. Everybody knows how good they are with OG, especially last year. He is a difference maker both on the offensive and especially the defensive end. One of the better defenders this team has for a team that's kind of struggling with defense at times. And you've seen it. But there's no rush for this team. I mean, they did have 2 big wins before Saturday. They crushed Memphis 143-106 on Monday. They beat Denver in a really close game, 122-112 at Wednesday at the Garden. So they passed those Western Conference tests for the most part. And look, the Knicks are 4 games up in Indiana for the 3 spot. They are 7 games ahead of the Pistons for a play-in spot. They're going to be, in all likelihood, one of the top 4 seeds in the East. There's no real panic that they have to do right now over the last 30-plus games. So there's no reason to really sit there and say, hey, OG, you got to come back and panic moves. Because Tom Thibodeau, we know, is going to play his guys. He's going to play them as much as some of you hate it out there. He's going to play them constantly. He's going to play them 30, 35, 40 minutes a game. So if that's the case, I'd rather sit OG for a little bit and let him go from there. So the big thing for the Knicks, and of course we'll dive into what they got coming up on the slate. Houston tonight, Toronto tomorrow in Canada. So back-to-back there. And then another marquee primetime game, 8:30 Eastern ABC Saturday night. The Knicks home to the Celtics. Knicks haven't seen the Celtics since opening night when Boston embarrassed them with an NBA record. Was it like 28 threes or something like that? It was an absolute demolishing. And the Knicks, I'm sure, are going to want their revenge. And it's big for the fact that they're only 2 back in the loss column for that 2 seed. So a lot of marquee games coming up for the Knicks. And they'll also have Indiana a week from tomorrow. So 3 of the next 4 are against some really good teams. So go to the trade deadline. That's Thursday, 3 o'clock Eastern time. Knicks, I think, are going to be looking to get a big man. Backup big for Karl-Anthony Towns. I think they're going to look to maybe move Mitchell Robinson. I mean, that's somebody, of course, the Knicks are not relying on him anymore to be healthy. We know the difference he can make defensively when he is healthy. That's just not the case now. There are going to be teams looking for big men help. One of those being the Lakers. And we get into why the Luka trade impacts the Knicks. Maybe you're the Knicks and you can trade Mitch Robinson to the Lakers. Now, the problem is the Lakers don't have a big man you're going to get back. But maybe you get a piece that you can dangle another trade. Maybe you get the Lakers to give up Nachimura or somebody like that, because the Lakers are going to be looking to get a big man if they're desperate about winning a championship this year, or at least making a run in the playoffs. Maybe you make that call to the Lakers and figure it out. But Jonas Valanciunas could be a guy the Knicks look at. There's so many different options they have. Chris Boucher would be another guy. Walker Kessler. A lot of big men that they've been rumored at. I think they'll end up with one. I think Leon Rose, we saw him made the Bogdanovich trade last year. So there's no reason to think that he won't get that deal done, or at least one big man deal done between now and Thursday. But I don't think they're in any superstars or anything like that. Like I think if you're looking at the Luka trade and the Knicks fan is thinking out there, like that's all the Mavericks got back for Luka, and you had to give up 5 first-round picks to get Mikal Bridges. I mean, that makes sense. I mean, you look at, I'm sure that Knicks fans are probably looking at, well, why weren't we involved in the Luka Doncic stuff? Why did Nico Harrison, who I give him credit, a lot of guts to publicly defend the deal from a short-term perspective with Kyrie and Anthony Davis. But of course, this is one of the craziest trades in the history of sports, because the Lakers have now prepped themselves post-LeBron. And I think when you look at the short term, at least what the Knicks did with the Bridges stuff, it's not just this year. They still have 2 more years, I think, with this group to try to get a championship. They didn't mortgage all the future as much as giving up 5 first-rounders can mortgage a future. They still have this core for multiple years. I think that's the difference between when some of these teams make win-now stuff, unlike like Phoenix, for example, with KD, Beal, and Booker. I mean, that failed, and that's going to set Phoenix back, I think, for the foreseeable future. I don't think this really changes the Knicks in any way. So to me, it's just trying to improve within the margins, maybe get the depth piece, a bench piece, something like that. They're not going to look to go crazy with the big trades. So we'll see what Leon Rose does between now and Thursday. Meanwhile, for Brooklyn, the other deal in town, well, the other big trade from yesterday, I think he can help them a little bit. Now, the Kings dealt De'Aaron Fox to the Spurs. Fox now with Wemby, which I think is a really cool point guard center combo that would work. The Kings get Zach LaVine, and they get a couple first rounders. Now, why is that a big deal? Cam Johnson's still available. I think Cam Johnson is I think he will get dealt between now and Thursday. The Nets have been dealing pieces like crazy. They obviously are looking to get themselves into the top 3 in the worst records just to have a chance at the number 1 pick, and a chance at Cooper Flagg, or a chance at Dylan Harper, or a chance at Ace Bailey. I would argue more Bailey than Harper at this point, because Dylan Harper hasn't been healthy all year. But you're the Nets. Now you can get those first-round picks you want back from Sacramento, because Sacramento is going to still look to win. Maybe you try to get 2 picks back or something like that. So I think it puts the Kings definitely in the Cam Johnson sweepstakes. I don't think the Lakers have much to give up. I know OKC would be a team to watch. Thunder have a lot of picks. Maybe Brooklyn gets those involved. But it's clear they're going to look to try to find a way to get Cam Johnson out, because look at them in the East right now. They're tied with Toronto at 16-33. There are only 3 teams worse than them in the East: Charlotte and obviously Washington. And the West only has 2 teams worse than them. That's the Pelicans and that's the Jazz. But they're only about 4 or 5 losses behind them. So they're going to look to compete. And again, you give Brooklyn credit for winning against Houston, but the goal is obviously for them is going to be to try to get into that top 3 to benefit their franchise long term. So we'll see what moves they make between now and Thursday. They're home to Houston tomorrow. So Rockets are back-to-back in New York. Home to the Wizards on Wednesday. Home to Miami on Friday. We'll see if Jimmy Butler is still in Miami between now and then. That'll be something to watch as well. Alden asked, any chance Cam Johnson gets dealt to the Knicks and reunites with Bridges? I don't think so. Again, you're looking at, the Nets and Knicks making another trade. I don't think the Nets are in that big of an interest. It's different because Mikal Bridges, you felt like kind of not forced his way, but semi-forced his way to the Knicks. I don't think Cam Johnson is really in that realm, so to speak. So I don't think the Knicks are going to go out there and make this massive trade for a big time player. I think it'll look again to try to improve it in the margins and see what they do. The big thing is going to be for Brooklyn. They're going to look for draft capital. Maybe they get a young player or something. But the big thing for them right now is draft capital going forward in their long-term rebuild. Really quickly with some of the women's sports, the Liberty, of course, WNBA free agency has started. The Liberty bring back Kennedy Burke, which is a really big bench piece for them, especially during their title run last year. They did lose Courtney Vandersloot. She elected to go to the Chicago Sky, a place where she's won a championship before. But, of course, Courtney made a big impact last year. The ability to win a championship. We've seen some of these teams make some big moves, whether it's Atlanta with Brittany Griner. The Mercury have upgraded tremendously with Alyssa Thomas. So Connecticut has kind of really changed the landscape. We've seen the Sparks get Kelsey Plum. Jewel Lloyd goes to Vegas. So that's going to be a big impact in the Liberty-Vegas rivalry. We'll see. I don't think Liberty can do much else. I mean, obviously, you still got Stewie. You still got Sabrina Ionescu. You still got Jonquel Jones. And this team still has the pieces that can win a championship again, go back to back. But a lot will have to go right in their favor. But bringing back Burke is a big piece for them. And other on the soccer side, Crystal Dunn parting ways with Gotham FC. I mean, that was, I was reading about that today, and I'm kind of surprised. Of course, Crystal Dunn, member of Team USA, she signs with Paris Saint-Germain. So she goes and plays over in Europe, which is going to be interesting, which I think is going to help her going forward. But big loss for Gotham FC, especially when you consider Dunn's one of those recognizable players out there. We'll see how the Gotham replaces her this spring and this summer. So we'll take another break. We'll come back and we'll talk Eli Manning. Of course, he will be in the spotlight this week with Super Bowl week and the Hall of Fame be announced on Thursday. We're going to dive into Eli Manning's Hall of Fame candidacy. Is he a first-time Hall of Famer? We'll dive into all that. I want to get your thoughts on that as well. You're listening to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all the sports. We'll be right back after this.
Are you a fan of Minnesota sports? Do you love the Vikings and hate the Packers? Are you a fan of the Timberwolves, Twins, Wild, Lynx, St. Paul Saints? Here on the Bold North Breakdown, we'll talk about all of those professional teams as well as all the college teams in the area. That's your basketball teams, football, hockey, volleyball, men's and women's sports alike. We talk about them all. Here on the Bold North Breakdown. Join me, your host, Glenn Ritter, every Thursday night at 7 p.m. Central to discuss all that is happening in the Minnesota sports scene. Here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
Hello, IE Sports Radio family and other sports families. My name is Alden Kay, and I want to welcome you to the AZ Sports Zone on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. If you're a fan of the Valley and the Grand Canyon State like me, then I've got the show for you. Tune in every week, where I will update you and give you the latest news for the Arizona Cardinals, Phoenix Suns, Arizona Diamondbacks, ASU Sun Devils, U of A Wildcats, GCU Antelope, and of course, the NAU Lumberjacks. Again, if you're a Valley sports fan and like all that is desert sports like me, tune in every week here on the IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We'll see you then.
Of course, welcome back to New York State Sports, iSports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Ricky K here with you. Yeah, I said to talk some Giants. Now, we'll get into the whole Super Bowl stuff a little bit later, but I want to talk about, of course, the Giants going to be in the spotlight somewhat this week because of the Hall of Fame announcement, which gets now announced the night of the NFL honors. And the name that's going to be most associated, of course, is Eli Manning. Now, everyone's going to, when you look at Eli Manning as a first-time Hall of Famer, I think Eli Manning is going to get in the Hall of Fame at some point. But I want to look into, is he a first-time Hall of Famer? Now, when I look at this era, which is kind of weird, because I was talking about this with Ralph as we were game planning for our Super Bowl show, which again will be 4 o'clock Eastern right here on the iSports Radio YouTube channel. So be sure to check that out. We'll be plugging links for it throughout the week. I never looked at Eli as a generational quarterback in this era. I mean, obviously, feeling as old as we are, because now when you see guys, when I look at the list and you look at Reggie Wayne and Fred Taylor and Steve Smith Sr. and Antonio Gates and Jared Allen, you start to feel really old. You might not be, but you start to feel that way. I mean, me being in my early 30s, you start to get to that point. But obviously, when people look at Eli Manning, a lot of the numbers they'll point out is the fact that in the regular season, he went 117 and 117, a 500 quarterback, 244 interceptions in 236 games. Did make the Pro Bowl 4 times. But you never really look at Eli as a great regular season quarterback. Like, there's not a lot of instances where I sit there and I'm like, okay, Eli shined in that year. Like, you can look at his regular season numbers, and as I was looking at that, he led the league in interceptions 3 times. Never really led the league in any passing yards category. QBR never really was big into that either. But what was the one topic we talked about earlier in the day? And that was, can a playoff runs and playoff legacies change the perception of what Eli can be? He's 11th on the all-time list in passing yards. He's 11th in passing touchdowns. So for his career, again, he's completed 11th most passes, attempted 11th most passes. Yards per game, he's in the top 20, 25 in the NFL. Obviously, stats get inflated, and those numbers are going to get worse as we see more passing in this league. But let's look at Eli from a playoff perspective. Eli Manning, 6 years of NFL playoff starts. He's 8-4, including 2 Super Bowls, 18 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. And you might say 9 interceptions is high for 12 games. He had 3 in his playoff debut in 2005. If you take that out, it's just 6 interceptions over 8 games. And when I think about Eli Manning, I think about the drive in Arizona and Glendale against the Patriots, which, of course, today being the 17-year anniversary of the David Tyree play. And you think about in Indianapolis, the throw to Mario Manningham down the sideline to beat the Patriots the second time. There's something about legacies and something about Eli Manning as a postseason quarterback. Now, you might say it's not. I think the playoffs, to me, when you look at a Hall of Famer, are bonus points and extra credit. Yeah, obviously, everybody's going to get evaluated in the regular seasons, but what you do in the postseason really makes or breaks a legacy. Eli Manning got big wins in the playoffs with the Super Bowls, the win in Dallas, the win in frigid Lambeau, the win against a really physical 49ers team in the NFC Championship that battered and bruised him like crazy. But he found a way to win that. Look, you can make the case he's one of the best, obviously one of the best quarterbacks in Giants history. This is going to be a really tough call because I think he's definitely going to be in the Hall of Fame at some point. Will it be this year? We're going to see. I mean, a lot of people point to maybe they wait till next year and put Eli and Tom Coughlin in together. To me, that would make the most sense because Tom Coughlin got the most out of Eli Manning. We clearly saw the drop-off at the end and the tough way of Eli's consecutive start streaks and ending. But Eli's still, of course, one of the more beloved players in Giants history. But that's the way we're going to judge quarterbacks now because it's going to be really tough in the future to say, okay, he's throwing a lot. Yeah, because the league, you throw a lot like crazy now. You don't really run the ball anymore. So your passing numbers now are going to look a lot different. But to me, Eli Manning is going to get in. Like, I think receivers, you're looking at, like, I'll give an Eli comparison for another position. Wide receiver would be like Julian Edelman. Julian Edelman never had great regular season numbers, but Julian Edelman is one of the better postseason wide receivers in NFL history. Is Julian Edelman a Hall of Famer? We're going to find out in a few years when he's eligible. But that's the litmus. Like, is like in your mind, and again, throw us out there. If you're here on YouTube and you want to comment, is Joe Flacco a Hall of Famer? Joe Flacco's got a Super Bowl. Joe Flacco's been around the league 10 plus years. Had some good runs with the Ravens. Is he truly a Hall of Famer? That's a tough one to evaluate. Because we know this era, to me, is defined by Manning, Brady, Roethlisberger, Rodgers, Breeze. I would throw Phillip Rivers in there. I mean, if you want to go early 2000s, Donovan McNabb, but you want to look at the early to mid 2000s, it's real early 2010s necessarily. Eli is kind of there. He's not all the way there. But to give him credit, he did say that he was elite. Remember that famous interview with the Michael Kay show? And it paid off for him. And he backed up everything he said, and that speaks to the kind of impact that he can have. So we'll see what happens on Thursday. But again, I think Eli will get in. It's just a matter of when and not if. We'll see if it's the first ballot. Giant fans, I'm sure, will celebrate when he does get in and make that trip to Canton. But we'll see if it's this summer. Looking at it now from the Jets side of things, Aaron Glenn is starting to get that coaching staff together. Now, we were not on the air. We just got off the air before his big press conference last week, which I thought was excellent. Spoke to what he knows what this job means, spoke to why he wanted this job. Of course, being an ex-Jet, I think helped him in his favor. And I think he's come up with a pretty good coaching staff, not going to lie to you. Steve Wilks, of course, being his defensive coordinator, of course, having that head coach experience from Arizona and the interim coach in Carolina, I think it's going to pay off for him. They did bring in Tanner Engstrand as the offensive coordinator. He, of course, from the Lions. So Aaron Glenn brings somebody over from the Lions. Also brought in another Lion in offensive line coach Steve Hayden. But Engstrand's going to be interesting because, of course, we look at the Lions and the evolution of Jared Goff. That's something to keep in mind for the system. Chris Banjo, they brought in a special teams coordinator. Banjo is highly regarded, formerly from the Denver Broncos. So he's the guy that I think is going to pay off in a big way. They do retain Sean Jefferson as the wide receiver coach. That was big for them. They bring in Chris Harris as the defensive backs coach. Eric Washington as defensive line coach. Aaron Curry as the linebackers coach. And the recent one, Scott Turner as the passing game coordinator, of course, the son of Norv Turner, was with the Raiders. Of course, the Raiders just gave Chip Kelly an insane amount of money to be the offensive coordinator there for Pete Carroll. So you get a little Pac-10, Pac-12 reuniting there in a way. But Charles London. Now, Charles London has been the quarterback coach for Desmond Ridder, Will Levis, but this past year, he was the quarterback coach for the Seahawks and Geno Smith. And Geno Smith has had a pretty good couple of years with Seattle. And you look at the Jets' options, I don't think they're going to be looking at a lot of quarterback-related options. Like Aaron Rodgers is there. But if you're looking at maybe Charles London, maybe basically bringing out the best in the Justin Fields or bringing out the best in some of these guys that are fringe, mid-tier quarterbacks the Jets might look to invest in. Maybe London is that kind of guy that can get the most out of minimalized talent. So that's out there right now. That's what the Jet coaching staff is. And we'll see as Aaron Glenn continues, still looking for running backs coach, a tight ends coach. But overall, with him and Darren Moogie as the GM, that has paid off in a big way for both of them as they will start to get their preparation. Of course, the East-West Shrine Bowl, Senior Bowl in the books. Now it'll be the Combine coming up in a few weeks. Very quickly, of course, we'll look at the Super Bowl. Eagles and Chiefs. No, we're not keeping it the color because I'm going to talk about the Eagles. I'm going to talk about it more, of course, on the show Sunday. I think this is a great matchup. Eagles are very talented. Of course, the Chiefs trying to be the first team to three-peat in NFL history. And to me, it comes down like this. If you're Philly, you want to win this game by double digits because if this game is close in the fourth quarter, It's very tough to not think that Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and the Chiefs are going to not find their way to win. We talked about it last week. The New York, New Jersey connection to the Super Bowl, Saquon Barkley, who I know it's going to be tough for Giant fans to pull for the Eagles. I know people, Giant fans who are rooting for because of Saquon Barkley. That's the only reason. But it's really tough, I'm sure, for your Giant fan to be like, yeah, the Eagles won, but I'm happy Saquon won. But very conflicting. But he's going to get a chance, of course, on his 28th birthday. And Steve Spagnuolo, a chance at another Super Bowl title as defensive coordinator. I think he's one of the best coordinators in NFL history on the defensive side. I'm still shocked he can't get a second shot at head coach. I said last week, if you're one of these teams that want to knock off the Chiefs, find some other team to take Matt Nagy or Spagnuolo as a head coach and make the Chiefs brain drain start. Kind of what we saw with the Patriots in the past. But you'll get my prediction on Sunday. I will not reveal it here because I want you to tune in at 4 o'clock Eastern. I don't like to give away that many things that quickly. So we'll take one more time out. We will come back. I want to talk about a Mets signing that is interesting, and no, it is not Pete Alonso. But it might not bring back a fan favorite with the Mets. We'll talk about the PECOTA projections that just came out, and we'll talk St. John's. One of the biggest weeks in St. John's history in 25 years is this week. And I will be in the venue for one of those big games coming up. I will dive into all that on our final segment coming up next on New York State of Sports and iSports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, guys? If you're looking for the best coverage of all Northern California sports, including 49ers, Giants, Warriors, then check out the NorCal Sports Report with yours truly, Andre Fernandez, every Wednesday at 11 a.m. Pacific Time, right here on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. We have guests every single week talking 49ers, Giants, Warriors, Sharks, San Jose Earthquakes, and a whole lot more, plus 3C2A. You do not want to miss this show. So tune in Wednesdays at 11 a.m. Pacific Time to the NorCal Sports Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports.
What's up, Pittsburgh? This is Ralph DeLeese, the host of the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Are you that passionate diehard Steelers, Penguins, Pirates, or just a Pittsburgh sports fan? Then please join me on the Injury Report every Tuesday on IE Sports Radio, the direct feed for all that is sports. And I will update you on all that's black and gold, and have you telling your Pittsburgh fans and friends what's up with Pittsburgh sports. Tune in Tuesday with me, Ralph DeLeese, the Injury Report on IE Sports Radio, your direct feed for all that is sports. Let's go!
Welcome back to New York State of Sports and IE Sports Radio, direct feed for all that is sports. We're going to wrap up episode 76. And of course, one final reminder, our Super Bowl 59 streaming extravaganza starts at 11 a.m. on Sunday. And of course, you just heard Ralph's drop here. The Injury Report will be my co-host at 4 p.m. Eastern. It's my show, or our show. We're going to look at Hall of Fame announcements. We're going to look at Brady in the booth. We're going to look at what a Super Bowl does to a player's legacy. Does it hurt it? Does it help it? And then we talked about just a moment ago with Eli Manning. Could it make you a Hall of Famer? So much to dive into. I'm really excited to be a part of this show and be a part of this event. So be sure to check that out again Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern, about 2 hours before kickoff. So you're starting to get ready for your party. Have me on in the background. We'll have some fun. We'll have us on in the background. So we'll talk in baseball. The Mets make a split signing. Nick Madrigal, a 1 year, about $1.25 million, if you will. And Madrigal is a player that hasn't really lived up to the hype that he was. Of course, people remember him as the prospect dealt to the White Sox dealt to the Cubs for Craig Kimbrell. 4th pick overall in the 2018 draft. Last year had negative WAR at the Cubs, 221, 280 on base, 256 slugging. He's never hit more than 2 home runs in his career. Now, I mentioned before the break now, what does that mean for losing a beloved Met? No, it's not about Pete Alonso, who's still out there. The Mets reports to pitchers and catchers report a week from today support St. Lucie. So right after the Super Bowl, we're going to be spring training, and we'll be diving into that over the next 2 months. But it might mean Jose Iglesias is gone. We haven't really seen the Mets and Jose Iglesias talk. There hasn't been a lot of connections between the two sides in terms of rumors this offseason. And Iglesias was a big part of this team from the OMG stuff and also had one of his better hitting seasons of his career. This is a player who's been known for his defensive prowess and has now become one of the more all-around guys. I was listening to SNY last night and John Stremski, and he was talking about the Yankees as a potential Iglesias fit. I'd love the Yankees to look at him. I'm shocked they haven't already for a team that's looking for infield help. Why wouldn't you kick the tires on possibly adding someone who's played well in New York, who's played well in the division, and can play multiple spots around the infield? That speaks to versatility. And it probably doesn't cost you that much, considering you look at the players that are still out there. I mean, Jack Flaherty last night signed a 2-year, $35 million deal with the Tigers. I mean, you're telling me if the Mets could do that $35 million for a team that needs another starting pitcher, they could have got Flaherty. Now, we know that they could be in if Dylan Cease gets dealt with the Padres, but these prices, like somebody get involved in that. That to me, that was just surprising. The PECOTA projections came out today from Baseball Prospectus. For those familiar with that, they have the Yankees right now as the tied for the best record in the American League with Texas. The Yankees were projected at 89-72, or 90-72, I should say, because you're rounding up. Baltimore is right there as well. They're at 89-73. So they're really high in the Orioles. The Orioles, to me, haven't done anything. And they lose Santander. Their best move was Charlie Morton for the pitching staff. I don't really see what I would be more higher on Toronto and Boston than I am in Baltimore. And you look at the National League, the Mets right now projected at 89-73. In second place in the East behind the Braves. Braves, if they're healthy, I think could win this division. Ronald Acuna should be back in the early portion this year. And, of course, we look at the Mets, and we'll preview this over the next 2 months. I mean, they still have some concerns with the offense, still have some concerns with the pitching staff. Now, this could all change. Again, you bring in Pete Alonso back, up the offense, it does some things. Dodgers are projected, by the way, for those that are curious, at 104-58. So if you go off this projection and how this would shake out, the Yankees, of course, would be the 1 seed in the American League. They would have a bye. The Mets would have the 4 seed. They would play Alden's squad, in the AZ Sports Zone, and the Diamondbacks in the first round in a best of 3. And you look at Arizona's pitching staff, it's Mets pitching staff, complete 180 when you're throwing Corbin Burns, Zach Gallen, and Merrill Kelly in a best of 3 playoff series. But again, still trying to make moves this offseason. We'll see if they do it. Nothing really new on the Yankees front. We all know they're still trying to trade Marcus Stroman. See if that ends up happening and gets them some money. We will find out. So let's go to some college basketball. A real exciting week for St. John's. I said before the last commercial, 1999 was the last time that St. John's will host a game at the Garden as a top 15 ranked opponent against another team ranked in the top 15. Now, the AP poll is going to come out in minutes, so we'll see where Marquette is. Marquette lost to UConn on Saturday at the Fiserv Forum, despite forcing 25 turnovers. I mean, UConn solo ball was incredible. But let's talk about the Johnnies, who are in first place alone in the Big East at 10-1. They are 19-3 overall, chance to match their win total from all of last year on Tuesday, but they had a good week. It started at the Capital One Center in Georgetown last week, and after Georgetown scared them a few weeks ago at the Garden, St. John's went in and led like 37-9 right out of the gate. They struggled in the second half offensively, but it didn't matter. They won 66-41. So Rick Pitino's squad sweeps Ed Cooley's team this year, and St. John's came in only as a 4.5-point favorite in that game. And they got a good all-around scoring, 13 from Kadary Richmond, 13 from Ejiofor, had 9 boards. Aaron Scott nearly had a double-double, 10 and 9 boards. And they held Georgetown to 24.6% shooting. Just a masterclass defensively from St. John's in that win. And then we get to Saturday. Saturday, they were home to Providence, and we know Providence from the past against St. John's is always a team that's going to play them tough. Back in December, there was the Zuby Ejiofor buzzer beater at the Dunkin' Donuts Center to beat the Friars. And Kim English made some comments that all St. John's is really good at is rebounding. I'm sure that was on the minds of a lot of those Red Storm players Saturday. And St. John's struggled in the first half. They went on a 7-0 run to end the half, took the lead, led by 19. They stretched the lead to 19 with about 9 minutes and change to go. And then Providence started getting red hot from three. Jabri Abdur-Rahim had 27 points. He made 8 3-pointers. Providence worked their way back. They tied the game with 32 seconds left. And Kadary Richmond, who I think had his best game as a St. John's Red Storm player, 24 points, 8 boards, 8 assists. It's the game-winning shot with 3 seconds to go to cap off a solid win. I won't say a great win because Rick Pitino was upset about it after the game. Defensively, they were not sharp at the end of the game, and that game should have been out of hand much earlier than it was. But wins are wins in the Big East. And for Rick Pitino's squad to keep finding them, I mean, that speaks to how strong this team is, their ability to win close games. And keep in mind, this team struggled to win close games early in the year. They lost the Baylor game out in the Bahamas. They lost to Georgia and Atlantis, and you wondered if it's going to be the same thing. St. John's fans are used to this team losing in tight situations. This year's been different. And it leads to, as I said before, a huge week. It starts tomorrow, 6:30 Eastern on FS1, and is arguably the game of the night in the sport is Marquette against St. John's. And I will be at this game. Full disclosure, I am a St. John's alum. And I tweeted this from my account, African 555, after the game Saturday. I told myself I had to get a ticket to this game because Rick Pitino has brought the enthusiasm back to this program. I can't remember a game I've been more excited to go to regular season since Duke in 2011. That was the last time I was at a regular season game for St. John's, was the Duke game in 2011. As a student, and Steve Lavin's squad upset then Kyrie Irving and Duke Blue Devils. It was 93-78. In a year they made the tournament. So to be back in the building, now I was at the Big East tournament in 2011, so that's why I say the biggest regular season game. I mean, this is going to be, if St. John's can sweep this week, I don't expect them to. But keep in mind, they only have one quad one win on their resume for a tournament. That's New Mexico. Now, I think they're going to make the tournament anyway. But if you can find a way to split these two games, maybe you win tomorrow and you lose a close one to UConn Friday. UConn's going to have the whole week to prep. They're going to get Liam McNeely back. And don't underestimate McNeely being back for UConn. It completely changes the way you look at that team. And Dan Hurley's squad, I think, is one you're not going to want to play toward the end of the year. So that's something to keep in mind. But I think you look at this week and you look at Marquette. It's going to be interesting to see how Marquette stops Ejiofor in the paint. It's going to be a good matchup of wing players, Cam Jones and RJ Lewis. And you've seen RJ really step his game up as an all chance to be an all Big East first team member. You've seen Richmond play his best basketball. You've seen Aaron Scott play well. The one thing you might be looking for, can Simeon Wiltshire start to get going? We will see. They really need him to get a shot going. If not, maybe you see Jaden Glover get some more time. But I can't remember a buzz this well about the St. John's program in my time as an alum. Now, a lot of people pointed out this 1999 was really the last big stretch. They had lost to Duke in overtime in late January at home. They beat Syracuse, who was ranked on the road, and then lost to UConn at home. Of course, that year, Duke and UConn went on to play in the national championship. Now, I think the St. John's team can be a second week team in the NCAA tournament. I don't know yet if they're a Final Four team. Maybe these next 2 weeks kind of change that for me. But I don't really get the sense that, again, I think this team has second week potential because the way they defend. And you've seen that. Now, if you look at I think the AP poll just came out, which is great. So we're going to dive into that real quick and see. St. John's has moved up to 12th. Marquette is down to 11. So it'll be number 12 hosting number 11 on Tuesday. So 2 top 15 teams going at it. And the Big East is going to be fun because St. John's, Marquette, UConn, and Creighton still have a lot of matchups with each other over the last 2 months. UConn has moved up to 19th. So 2 top 20 matchups for St. John's this week. And Creighton is still not ranked, which I'm really surprised about. Creighton is 29th if you go by receiving votes. They're really good. We saw that with Ashworth and Kalkbrenner, how good they can be. But this is, again, you talk about how big of a week this is. If St. John's can split, they still get UConn at home, and they still have Creighton at home. They don't really have a lot of tough road games left. I think that's after UConn. I think at Villanova is probably the toughest road game they have left. I mean, Rick Pitino has the magic going. And that's what's going to make this a whole lot of fun this week. Especially when you consider Friday. It's a national game on Fox. Pitino versus Hurley. We know the two of them don't like each other. A lot of yelling at the officials. So if you like entertaining basketball from that standpoint. But can the Stars step up? And these are the moments that those players the last 2 years have been waiting for. This is the moment to get St. John's national exposure and to really make this team one to stick out. Because regionally, I think the buzz is there. They love when New York basketball is good. When St. John's is good, it really changes the landscape of the Big East. At least you could say St. John's is good. Borderline really good. They had a chance to be great this week. That's going to come up later. So really quickly look around the rest of the New York, New Jersey landscape in the Big East. Not a good moment for Seton Hall. Probably at the lowest point of their season. They lose to DePaul, 74-57. Pirates were down 9 at the half and just never recovered. They host Butler on Wednesday, and they're at Georgetown this weekend. As for Syracuse, their last game was on Saturday. They lost to Stanford big during the week on their West Coast trip, but then they went to Cal, got up 17 at the half and won 75-66. Lucas Taylor had a strong game in that one. Duke's coming up next. Syracuse plays Duke on Wednesday, 7 o'clock Eastern on ESPN2. Cooper Flag coming into the Carrier Dome. And look, Duke has not really been challenged in the ACC. They blew out North Carolina the other day. I don't see Syracuse hanging with Duke much at all. I think Duke's tests are going to come in the NCAA tournament because they haven't really been tested in the last 2 months. Syracuse then will host Boston College Saturday, 3:15 Eastern on the CW network. Then finally, Rutgers, and I mentioned Rutgers earlier. It's just really been a rough year for them, a lot of high expectations, a lot of chance to put themselves on the map, and they just haven't done it. The other Saturday, they lose to Michigan, 66-63. JaMychal Davis puts up 20 points, so a strong performance for him off the bench. Acuff at 14 off the bench, and Dusty May and Michigan's defense did a good job on Ace Bailey. 10 points for Bailey on just 3 of 15 shooting. Didn't make a 3. He had 6 rebounds. Rutgers shot 27% from 3 and just 32% from the floor in a game that was very winnable considering Michigan let them hang around a little bit. Michigan shot 47%, but they turned it over 17 times. So Rutgers now at 11-11, and they're in really big danger. Remember, not everybody makes the conference tournament in the Big Ten. If Rutgers doesn't make the conference tournament, they're a little worried if I'm Steve Peichel. Rutgers' next test come Wednesday. They are at home to Illinois. That's 8:30 on the Big Ten Network. And then they're at Maryland Sunday at noon. Maryland and Kevin Willard have been, I think, one of the more underrated stories of the year, 17-5. They have played extremely well. So Rutgers has those 2 games coming up on the schedule. And finally, want to give a quick Red Bulls update. That just came out in the last hour or so. And good friend of the show, Tom Bogert, who we've had, at least I've had on my past shows in the past, reported about an hour ago the Red Bulls have signed Lewis Morgan to a contract extension. Morgan wanted to stay and pledge future to the club despite interest elsewhere. That's big because Lewis Morgan, of course, plays for the Scottish national team. He's a guy that could have been a player that could do some things in Europe. But Lewis Morgan staying with the New York Red Bulls, so that is big for them. Right. 600 people tuning in. It's been probably one of the better shows we've had. It's a testament to you, the listener out there, tuning in each and every week. So thanks for that. Of course, the big news from hockey, JT Miller, get back to the New York Rangers. Rangers are going to try to make that push. They've got a guy in the locker room that they seem to really like having in there. No more excuses. Got to go out there and deliver. Big week, of course, for the Johnnies. We talked about now number 12 in the AP poll. They could get to the top 10 if they win both games this week. It'll be tough. But the Marquette game tomorrow night at Madison Square Garden is just going to be electric. So much fun. Yes, it's an early tip, but if you can get into the building, get into the building. It's going to be, I think, one of the fun atmospheres of the year. And then UConn on Friday. We'll see what the Knicks and Nets do at the trade deadline this week. Of course, Super Bowl 59 going up this weekend. Me and my partner, Ralph Fleece from the Injury Report, will be on at 4 p.m. Eastern here on the IE Sports Radio YouTube channel to talk about it from the legacy, broadcasting, Hall of Fame, everything you want for Super Bowl 59. You'll hear on that show over an hour, and we're happy to be a part of this extravaganza special here on IE Sports Radio. We have got a great lineup of action today. This is KC Sports, Set Point, Carolina Sports Update, The Extra Mile, Chi-Town Weekly. So much going on the network today, and that's why I love being a part of Mondays and at least getting the stage going for some of these other shows on the network. So again, tune in Sunday. Next week we'll be talking Super Bowl recap, pitchers and catchers report to spring training, St. John's, see what they do. We'll recap the trade deadline in the NBA and then recap the first halves for Devils, Islanders, and Rangers. Thanks for tuning in this week. From all of us at IE Sports Radio, I'm Ricky K saying enjoy the rest of the week. I'll see you Sunday for Super Bowl 59. Until then, good week, everybody.